Hey friends. So today we are talking to this is I think the third time that we've had a repeat guest, which is kind of awesome. So today we're talking to RJ Daniel Hanna from the new movie coming out called Succubus. Daniel, real quick before we start, I want to say congratulations on everything with Hard Miles.
Thank
I,
you.
I enjoyed watching that. I'm glad I got to see that and all the success that it's having. So congratulations on all that.
Thanks so much. Yeah, it was great to get to screen it around and talk to people like you and just get it out in the world. It was fun.
Thank you. So now we're a completely different genre. So we went from something that was heartwarming and like a feel good story to like what did I just watch and what's going on here? uh, but Succubus it's I really enjoyed it. I love the take on the horror genre that you did. So tell us really quick about like how did you come up with the storyline for it, and then also the way that it's filmed because it's not your typical horror movie.
Yeah, so the basic storyline came up. I mean, I started getting into horror many years ago because I think it's just an interesting like platform and kind of vessel for all excuse me. Interesting like platform or vessel for all kinds of great stories and takes on things. And so where it came about was it was kind of like it was probably like maybe like 2016 or somewhere around there, 2015 maybe even. For the first time ever, I was on like an online dating, platform and just kind of experiencing that. And I would encounter at the time like people that were bots or were phishing and stuff like that. It was a little maybe more like the Wild West. And it was just like an interesting experience of kind of realizing people have ulterior motives and stuff like that out in this world. It just kind of planted a little seed in my head. And just as time has gone on, and just we spend so much more of our lives like living in screens, like living in this sort of, pseudo reality. And I just wanted to do something about like the sinisterness that could exist within that frame, within this like little box that's with us all the time, and how it kind of keeps pulling us back in. And actually, I guess going into your question, if you have a more something more specific on how it's shot, but that really what that really had to do with was the idea of starting the movie inside a screen at first and kind of showing people we're going to go back and forth between these two worlds. We're going to go back and forth between like this kind of frame that we're in here, where you're just seeing what's on the screen, but then also the real world. And I haven't seen many movies that really try and separate the two and kind of do both. Some live in one and some kind of stay outside, but that was kind of the idea was what happens when something happens within the virtual world and we kind of take it out with us into the physical world. Like, can that change the physical world, the real world, these experiences that we've had in virtual reality, even if it's seemingly just a character on his own, and then getting into the sense of trying to kind of get pulled back, ultimately, literally pulled back into a screen, like into this alternate world. Um, and yeah, that was just kind of our focus was trying to always pull us back to this like sinister beacon that was a phone or a laptop or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say this, but my laptop is old. It's like 14 years old. So I couldn't screen it on my laptop. So I was watching it on my phone next to my laptop. And then like my friends were like messaging me like, it's like about our fantasy draft and whatnot. So it was weird like seeing the movie and then like the messages pop up in the movie and then next to me that happening and I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on here? But
Yeah, you're having like a 4D experience almost or something.
pretty much. But I did like I said, like you said, it's great to see how like it's on the screen on his phone, and then all of a sudden you kind of see like what's behind the scenes, and that's like toward the near the end of the movie with the stuff that's happening with Christopher. But speaking of Christopher and Audra, I mean, what was it about Rachel Cook and then and Brandon Bradley that made you say like these are the perfect people for this role?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with Brendan because he was someone I worked with for the first time, maybe 12 or probably more like 14 years ago. We did like a Subway restaurants time travel web series together, and Brendan just, he's so kind of lovable and the character is flawed and kind of early in the process, you know, we would hear some people would relate to the character and like him and kind of be like, oh, he's just this guy. He's making a lot of mistakes. You know, he's making a lot of mistakes and he's getting himself into a lot of trouble, but he's not the worst guy ever. And other people would be like, oh, this guy, I hate this guy. You know, like he's such a terrible character. And I thought, okay, no one's going to think that Brendan is just a totally bad guy. Like you're going to see he's making mistakes, but he doesn't have the worst heart, you know, in the world. And that was something that I really wanted from that character, and that he brought to it. And like Rachel, you know, Rachel came into the project relatively late because we had somebody drop out, and then she was just kind of the most perfect person I think that ever could have existed for that role. And she really, you know, we did some improvs for Brendan and me. We did some script readings and some improvs just like this over Zoom to kind of try and see what's there, like what would her take on it be. And then it was sort of discovering with her kind of all these other layers to it. But she really brought it, like really came really prepared, even though she came to it very late. And one of the things that was funny about working with her too was so many of the actors have to frame themselves with phones, you know, and like Rachel has such like a instinct just for like how to move the camera in the frame. And we would block stuff with movement and things like that, but in a very basic level. And then what she would kind of do organically to kind of like shift you feeling like, is she being seductive? Is she afraid? Is she, you know, powerful? Like she kind of covered a lot of that stuff in the sections, you know, in the first part that come from the phone or come from the laptop. And so it was just it was a really different experience than anything I've ever had making a movie.
Yeah, that's the thing that I was like wondering too. Like, are they holding the phones or the cameras themselves while they do some of these shots? Because
Yeah.
it looks really, it's pretty awesome though how it looks.
Yeah, well, thanks. I mean, it is. They're doing it all. I mean, Brendan was walking through, you know, the whole house, you know, with basically a phone stuck to a laptop because we just shot it all on the phone because it was more consistent and better quality
Uh,
for all the stuff that's shot like that. So he just had the laptop and he's working, he's interacting, he's moving around, and like just in the moment finding, you know, they're all finding their frames, and there's no one else helping with any of that. It's just they're solo and we're all hiding, trying, you know, so that we're not going to be in frame in case he moves the computer around and reveals something.
right.
Yeah, it was a challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like it. And then, but speaking also too, like since they're using their phones to record, like towards, I was wondering like, is a lot of the effects in this were they all just practical effects? Because it doesn't look like anything is like much CGI in the movie. So was it all just
It's
practical?
so there's a lot of practical effects for sure, and most of the our like Lincoln was our VFX suit. This guy Lincoln Smith, who I've worked with a couple times, he did Hard Miles also, and sort of similar to Hard Miles, you would never know that there's any visual effects in Hard Miles. Like that was what we wanted it to feel like in this, even though it's obviously a very different world. But there's a lot of, especially once things cross over and the movie becomes full horror. There's like a lot of visual effects kind of in certain sequences, like almost every shot maybe has like an element of visual effect, or every wide shot. But then we're also working with practical effects, like the sort of body horror elements are all physical, you know, and those were designed by Ill Will Productions, and those are all real stuff. And sometimes there'd be something added, maybe just to tie something together in terms of like a visual effect. But it all started with like a practical process, and that was a really important and really good thing too for our just for the visual effects, you know, teams also to be able to uh work off of real stuff and try and enhance real stuff and make it look as real as possible from like real physical things that are puppets and moving. And yeah, it was great, really fun.
Yeah, there was a couple moments that had me like squirming in my seat, and I think there are going to be a lot of men watching this and doing the same thing.
Yeah,
But but like, how far were you able to go with like those scenes, or did they come out like how you wrote them, or did were the or like I guess like when you like did a test run of it, people are like, "This, I think this is a little too much. We need to cut it back a little."
Yeah, I mean, it's specifically, I mean, there's specifically one death scene that I'm sure you're thinking of where it was really for us a matter of I kind of I kind of came out the way I wanted it, which was to show a lot, but also make you feel like it's more than you're seeing. And I think that is kind of always in the editing of these things is to give we were trying to give people an image that they haven't really seen before, and like a moment in a horror film they haven't seen before. But at the same time, you don't want to give them so much time to take it in that they can start to like get used to it. So as soon as you process what you've seen, it's on to the next thing, on to the next thing was kind of our goal there. And so, you know, the one big character death scene that we have in the movie is one where there's a ton of shots and it's probably 1 second, but it's like we wanted it to be one of the most kind of eye-popping, horror seconds that you're ever going to see. And that it was a blast to do that. And you only got one take at all this stuff. We only had one, all these practical prosthetics and things like that. In theory, they could have been reapplied maybe once, but it was so time consuming. So it was like sit there and get it right and get it in. And it was exciting to see that come together and kind of go, okay, I can see how that will cut together in my head.
Yeah, I think that's one of the deaths that a lot of people are going to talk about after they see this.
Yeah.
Because like what I said when I watched it, I was just like, I'm gonna walk away for a second and come back. But it was really good. I really enjoyed it. And not to say nothing about the character, but I think it kind of deserved it. Um,
I understand.
Lastly, I want to talk to you about Orion Zephyr. I mean, that's just an amazing name, and Ron Pearlman is just so great in this. It feels like he's just like in a zone while he's doing this. I feel like there could be a series of him, like Orion Zephyr, Succubus
There you
Hunter.
go. Yep.
Um, but like, how was it working with him, and like I guess creating this character? And then was he always the one that you thought would be Orion?
So Ron was the first person who really was attached to the movie, which was really great early on. And like, he got the script. He thought it was like a really interesting character because there's a lot of layers to him, and you don't quite know exactly what he's thinking all the time, and that was like a really fun thing to talk about. And Ron and I had to actually talk about like particle physics and things like that, which is I only know the very most basics to put in the margin of the movie. And yeah, what I think was so cool about Ron, one, he was just there and just like we were just like working all of his scenes, and he just delivered, just really delivered, like right, and most of the stuff's at night too, and so just right there all night going through it, and he really is just an absolute pro, and like the driest sense of humor, where you're not quite sure if he's joking or not, and so you just kind of keep going. Um, but the thing that I thought that was kind of interesting with him is that it's kind of a hard against type for him, because he's played so many different kinds of careers or parts obviously over his career, but he is sort of such like a heavy, he plays such a great heavy, such a great tough guy. And in this, he kind of has to fill that role while also playing a scientist, while also trying to be the good guy. But the circumstances don't allow him to just be the good guy, basically. And so you're still getting that like Ron Perlman like intimidatingness but it's kind of coming from left field, and he kind of gets to start in a little bit more of an emotional place. It's just in the very beginning of the movie, and just playing with those things was really fun.
Yeah, I loved how it circled back. I'd say from the big end, but again, I had a lot of fun just watching him. It looks like he was having a lot of fun just being this caring, I guess, professor, but you don't know what his ulterior motives
Yeah.
are. But it was just fantastic. But I mean, so it seems like we might have more to this story. I mean, hopefully we do. But I mean, what's next? I guess for if we can say anything, and then I guess also what's next for you after we're done with Succubus.
We definitely have a lot of ideas for Succubus sequels and spinoffs, and the movie kind of ends showing you where it could go, and what could come next. And we've also talked about, there's definitely more that happened in Ron's story before the movie started, and after the movie goes on, there's more that can be explored there. So that's something we would really like to do. So we'll see. Hopefully it catches the zeitgeist and gets like becomes like a cult hit enough of a movie that people are asking, well, what does happen next? And kind of for me, I'm working more in genre space because there is so much you can do with it. So I've got a movie that we are I'm working with some producers. We're not like announcing it yet, but working with some producers on a horror movie set on Skid Row that I'm really excited about. Something I wrote before this, and I'm also working on a western with Matthew Modine from Hard Miles, and so that's something that we're really excited about. And it gets pretty dark. It's like a very different type of movie than he and I have done together because we've done two much more positive, kind of uplifting movies. But we're just kind of digging in a little deeper, and also working on a thriller set in Arkansas that's a little Silence of the Lambsy. So those are kind of like three movies that are getting close to ready to go, and just it'll be kind of like a horse race, kind of like it was with Hard Miles in this one, to see like what comes together. So hopefully one of them.
Nice. That's awesome. Hopefully we'll get to speak to you again when we're
Yeah.
at those finish lines. But friends, Succubus comes out September 24th on demand and like on digital. So definitely check it out. Go support this movie. I mean, it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. And Daniel, it was nice talking to you again, and much success on everything coming up.
Thanks so much. Good
All right,
talking
have
to
a
you
good,
again too.
take care.
You too.